In the small town of Dunhaven, perched along the craggy cliffs of Nova Scotia's eastern shore, Wadsworth's wares stood as a weathered monument to a bygone era. The general store, its cedar shingles faded to a silvery gray, overlooked the Atlantic, where waves crashed against rocks with a rhythm as steady as the town's heartbeat. For 40 years, Millicent Wadsworth, now 62, had run the store with a quiet pride. Her silver curls often tucked under a knitted cap, and her penchant for cardigans made her a familiar figure to fishermen, schoolchildren, and tourists seeking jars of her famous blueberry jam. Dunhaven was not a place that changed quickly. Its 800 residents clung to traditions: the annual lobster festival, the Sunday choir at St. Agnes's Church, and the daily pilgrimage to Wadsworth's wares for coffee, bait, or a skein of Millicent's hand-dyed wool. But by the spring of 2025, the store's shelves were thinning. The fishing industry, battered by regulations and climate shifts, had dwindled, and with it, the town's economy. Millicent's ledgers, kept in a battered tin box, showed red ink creeping across the pages like a tide. Millicent, however, was not one to dwell on gloom. Each morning she swept the store's pine floors, humming old folk tunes, and arranged her jams in neat rows, as if order could stave off collapse. Her cat, Bartholomew, a tabby with a missing ear, lounged on the counter batting at stray yarn. The store smelled of coffee grounds, cedar, and the faint salt of the sea, a scent that comforted Millicent even as creditors' letters piled up in her back room. One foggy April morning, a stranger arrived in Dunhaven. Gertrude Hensley, a reporter from the Maritime Chronicle in Halifax, had heard whispers of Wadsworth's wares troubles. At 58, Gertrude was known for her sharp prose and sharper tongue, her tweed jackets and horn-rimmed glasses giving her the air of a librarian with a vendetta. She had been assigned a feature on struggling coastal businesses, and Millicent's store, with its quaint charm and rumored insolvency, was her first stop. Gertrude parked her battered sedan outside the store, noting the peeling paint and the open sign that hung crookedly in the window. She adjusted her scarf, grabbed her recorder, and stepped inside, the bell above the door jangling like a warning. Millicent was behind the counter, knitting a scarf the color of kelp, when Gertrude entered. "Morning," Millicent called, her voice bright but strained, as if she sensed the weight of the visit. "Looking for bait or jam?" "Got a new batch of blueberry, just set yesterday." Gertrude offered a thin smile. "Neither, I'm afraid. I'm Gertrude Hensley, Maritime Chronicle. I'm here to talk about your store. Mind if I ask a few questions?" Millicent's hand stilled, the knitting needles clicking softly. "Oh well, that's unexpected." "Sure, come on back." She led Gertrude to the cluttered back room, where shelves sagged under the weight of unsold lobster traps, campies, and stacks of yellowed receipts. Bartholomew followed, leaping onto a crate to observe. Gertrude set up her recorder, her eyes scanning the chaos. "Let's start with your vision for Wadsworth's wares. What's your blueprint for keeping this place afloat?" Millicent blinked, her fingers twitching around her needles. "Blueprint? You mean like a plan?" She tapped her temple, her silver curls bouncing. "It's all up here, see? A grand design for the future." Gertrude's pen hovered over her notebook. "Could you elaborate? What's in this grand design?" Millicent's smile faltered. "Well, it's about selling more, isn't it? Maybe more scarves. Folks love my scarves. Or teas. Fancy ones from Halifax. People like tea, don't they?" She began rearranging jam jars, her movements jerky, as if motion could mask her uncertainty. Gertrude's eyebrow arched. "Tea and scarves? That's your strategy." Her tone was neutral. But Millicent felt the sting. "Not just that," Millicent said quickly. "I'm thinking displays. Like a pyramid of jam jars. Eye-catching, you know? Architectural." She gestured vaguely at the shelves, her voice rising with forced enthusiasm. Gertrude scribbled a note. "Pyramid of jam jars? Let's talk numbers. There are rumors Wadsworth's wares is facing bankruptcy. Can you confirm or deny?" Millicent's face flushed, her hands fluttering like startled gulls. "Bankruptcy? That's just talk from the fish market. We're innovating. The jam pyramid and maybe seashell necklaces. Tourists love those. And a knitting night. Had one last month though. Well, only Bartholomew showed up." She laughed, a brittle sound. Gertrude pressed on, her questions growing sharper. "What about financial records? Can you show me your books?" "They're in a box somewhere," Millicent mumbled, now untangling a skein of yarn. "Bartholomew's my mascot, you know. He brings in customers. Don't you, Bart?" The cat yawned, unimpressed. The interview unraveled from there. Millicent's ideas grew wilder: glow-in-the-dark fishing bait, a lobster-themed scarf line, even a vague plan to partner with the lighthouse for undefined events. Gertrude, struggling to keep the conversation on track, filled her notebook with question marks. When she left an hour later, her expression was unreadable, but Millicent felt a knot in her stomach, as if she'd failed a test she hadn't known she was taking. The Maritime Chronicle published Gertrude's article a week later, under the headline, Dunhaven's Last Stand, The Quirky Struggle of Wadsworth's Wares. The piece was kinder than Millicent feared, calling her a dreamer with a heart for her community, but laying bare the store's financial woes. It described the jam pyramid with a mix of amusement and pity and quoted Millicent's vague plans without judgment. Yet the subtext was clear. Wadsworth's Wares was a relic, and Millicent was out of her depth. At the Rusty Anchor Diner, Dunhaven's unofficial gossip hub, the article sparked heated debate. Captain Amos Pritchard, a grizzled fisherman with a beard like steel wool, slammed his coffee mug on the counter. Gertrude Hensley came all the way from Halifax to poke fun at Millicent? That's low. Millie's one of us. Ethel Cormack, the diner's owner and Millicent's oldest friend, disagreed. It's not Gertrude's fault Millie didn't have answers. A jam pyramid? She's got no plan, Amos. That store's been bleeding money for years. Across town at St. Agnes's Church, the choir ladies whispered their own theories. Beatrice Tuttle, 70 and proud of her perfect attendance record, thought Gertrude's article was a call to action. We ought to help Millicent, she said, adjusting her hat. She's stubborn, but she's Dunhaven's heart. Meanwhile, Millicent avoided the diner, too embarrassed to face the stairs. She spent her days in the store, knitting furiously as if each stitch could hold the walls together. Bartholomew watched, his green eyes tracking her every move. The phone rang with creditors' demands, and Millicent let it go to voicemail, her hands trembling as she counted the jars on her shelves, 117, not enough to build a pyramid that could save her. Millicent's connection to Wadsworth's Wares ran deeper than profit. The store had been her father's, built in 1955 when Dunhaven's fishing fleet was the pride of the coast. Young Millicent had grown up stacking cans and sweeping floors, learning the names of every fisherman who walked through the door. When her father died in 1985, she inherited the store at 22, determined to keep it alive. She'd married briefly, a sailor named Clarence who left for greener pastures, and had no children. The store became her family, Bartholomew her closest confidant. But the world had changed. Big box stores in Halifax drew customers away, and online retailers offered bait and yarn at prices Millicent couldn't match. The fishing quotas tightened, and Dunhaven's youth left for cities, leaving the town graying and quiet. Millicent had tried to adapt, adding her jams, her scarves, even a small coffee counter, but each idea seemed to sink faster than the last. One evening, as the sun dipped below the cliffs, Ethel visited the store. She brought a thermos of tea and sat with Millicent on the porch, the sea's roar filling the silence. You saw the article? Ethel asked, her voice soft. Millicent nodded, her eyes on the horizon. Made me sound like a fool. Jam pyramids. What was I thinking? You were nervous, Ethel said. But you've got to face it, Millie. The store's dying. You can't knit your way out of this. Millicent's jaw tightened. It's all I've got, Ethel. If I lose this place, what am I? Ethel reached for her hand. You're Millicent Wadsworth. You're Dunhaven. We'll figure something out. The turning point came unexpectedly at the annual Lobster Festival. Dunhaven's main street was strung with fairy lights, and booths sold chowder, crafts, and lobster rolls. Millicent, despite her worries, set up a stall for her jams and scarves, her smile as bright as ever. The townsfolk, moved by the Chronicle article, stopped by in droves, buying jars and complimenting her knitting. Beatrice Tuttle, clutching a scarf, suggested a community fundraiser to save the store. Millicent laughed it off. A fundraiser? For my little shop? You're too kind, Beatrice. But Beatrice was relentless. By the next Sunday, the choir ladies had organized a meeting at St. Agnes's. Fishermen, shopkeepers, and even school children gathered, their voices overlapping with ideas. Amos proposed a Wadsworth's Wares Day where every purchase would support the store. Ethel suggested a co-op model where townsfolk could invest in the business. A teenager, Clara, pitched an online shop for Millicent's jams, complete with a social media campaign. Millicent, overwhelmed, felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered. I thought I was alone in this. You're not, Beatrice said firmly. Dunhaven doesn't let its own fall. Over the next months, Dunhaven rallied. Clara, a tech-savvy high schooler, built a simple website for Wadsworth's Wares, showcasing Millicent's jams and scarves with photos taken against the cliffs. The Wadsworth's Wares Day drew crowds, with Amos grilling lobster and Ethel serving tea. The co-op idea took root, with 20 residents pooling funds to clear Millicent's debts. Gertrude Hensley returned, this time to write a follow-up. Dunhaven's Miracle. A town saves its store. The store didn't fully recover. By autumn, Millicent closed its doors, the weight of maintenance costs too heavy. But she opened a smaller shop in the community center, selling her jams and scarves alongside other local crafts. The co-op funded a delivery van, painted with Bartholomew's likeness, to bring goods to neighboring towns. Millicent, once adrift, found purpose in teaching knitting classes, her laughter echoing through the center. Gertrude's second article captured it all. Millicent's resilience, Dunhaven's heart, and the power of a community that refused to let go. Millicent framed the article, hanging it beside her father's old fishing hat. Each night as she locked up, she patted Bartholomew and whispered, "We didn't need a blueprint, did we? We just needed Dunhaven." Years later, Wadsworth's wares was a memory, but Millicent's stall at the Lobster Festival remained a highlight. Tourists bought her jams, locals wore her scarves, and Clara, now in college, managed the website from afar. Millicent, at 65, still hummed folk tunes, her needles clicking as the sea roared below. Dunhaven had changed, but Millicent's heart beat on. If you like the story, then hit the like button and subscribe our channel for daily that kind of interesting stories.